Amara Johnson walked into the local school clothing store with excitement. She had just gotten her back-to-school list, and she was ready to pick out a few items for the new year. The store, a popular one in the area, was always filled with students, parents, and busy workers. Today, however, it felt a little different. The air was tense, and Amara wasn't sure why. She made her way through the aisles, admiring the neatly arranged school uniforms and backpacks. She picked up a few items, a couple of shirts and pants, and decided to head to the fitting room to try them on. She wasn't in a rush. It was a calm afternoon, and she had all the time in the world. As Amara entered the fitting room area, she noticed a man standing nearby, eyeing her carefully. He was older, dressed in a dark suit, with a stern look on his face. She smiled politely, assuming he was another customer, but he didn't smile back. Instead, he spoke in a cold tone. "I'm afraid you can't try these on." Amara was surprised. "Why not?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. The man didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked her up and down, then said, "You don't have permission to use the fitting rooms. You need to leave." Confused and now feeling uncomfortable, Amara tried to explain. "I'm just trying to shop like everyone else. I've been coming to this store for years." But the man, who Amara later learned was Mr. Harris, the store manager, was firm. "Leave now," he demanded. "We don't allow people to use the fitting rooms without clearance. You're not welcome here." Amara stood there for a moment, shocked by the rudeness. Her mind raced. What did he mean by not welcome? She had done nothing wrong. She was simply shopping as anyone else would. "Excuse me?" she asked again, trying to understand the situation. "I don't know what's going on, but I just want to try on some clothes." Mr. Harris repeated his words, pointing toward the door. "I said, leave. We don't serve people like you." Amara's heart sank. She knew what he meant, and the feeling of humiliation hit her hard. She had heard stories of people being treated unfairly, but she never thought something like this would happen to her, especially not in her hometown, where she had lived her whole life. Trying to hold back tears, Amara left the store without arguing. She walked out slowly, her head down. The words "leave" and "not welcome" echoed in her mind as she walked back to her car. She couldn't believe how quickly everything had turned sour. As she sat in her car, trying to gather her thoughts, a burning question lingered in her mind. Why? Why had Mr. Harris treated her like that? She had done nothing wrong. Was it because of the way she looked? Amara couldn't shake the feeling that something unfair had just happened. She knew she had to tell her mother, Angela, about the incident. But first, she had to figure out how to process what had just happened. Amara drove home, her mind racing with thoughts of what had just happened at the store. The anger and frustration she had felt while being asked to leave were now mixed with confusion. She couldn't understand why she had been treated that way. She had always gone to that store, and it had never been an issue before. When she walked through the door of her house, she was met by her mother, Angela, who was preparing dinner in the kitchen. Angela could tell something was wrong just by the look on Amara's face. She put down the knife she was using to chop vegetables and walked over to her daughter. "Amara, honey, what's wrong?" "You look upset," Angela said, her voice filled with concern. Amara took a deep breath and explained everything to her mother. The rude manager, the way she was treated, and how she was kicked out of the store. Angela listened quietly, nodding along, her face growing more serious as Amara spoke. "Mom, it doesn't make sense. Why did he treat me like that?" "I was just shopping," Amara said, her voice trembling with frustration. Angela paused for a moment, thinking carefully. "I know, sweetheart. That's not right at all. We've been coming to that store for years. Something doesn't add up." Amara nodded, feeling the weight on her chest. She had never been treated this way before, and it hurt more than she wanted to admit. As they sat down to dinner, Angela promised Amara that they would get to the bottom of the situation. She knew her daughter, and she knew that Amara wouldn't let this go until she got some answers. The next day, Angela made a few calls. She had contacts in the community and knew that she could find out more about the store and the manager, Mr. Harris. After a bit of digging, Angela discovered something surprising. It turned out that the store, which had been around for years, had recently been bought by a new owner. The previous owner had sold the business to a man named David Johnson, a well-known businessman in the area. David had a reputation for being fair and inclusive, and he had made it clear that he wanted the store to reflect these values. Angela's jaw dropped when she found out who the new owner was. David Johnson. "That's Amara's father's business partner," she exclaimed, her voice full of realization. Amara looked at her mother, confused. "What do you mean? How does that matter?" Angela smiled. "Your dad and David have been talking about opening new businesses together. David just bought that store without telling anyone. He must have made changes to the management." Amara's eyes widened as she pieced the information together. Mr. Harris had no idea who she was when he kicked her out. He had no idea that her father and David Johnson were connected. But why did Mr. Harris treat me like that? Didn't he know who I was? Amara asked, still trying to understand. "I don't think he did," Angela said softly. "But I'm sure your father will handle this. We'll get it sorted out." The next day, Amara's father, Mr. Johnson, called her to check in on her. He had heard about the incident and was furious that his daughter had been treated this way. He promised Amara that he would take action and address the situation with the store immediately. Amara felt a sense of relief knowing her father was on her side. Later that week, Mr. Johnson personally went to the store to meet with Mr. Harris. He wasn't angry, but he made it clear that this kind of treatment was unacceptable. The conversation was tense, but Mr. Harris soon realized his mistake and offered an apology. He admitted that he had made a snap judgment and apologized to both Amara and her family for the misunderstanding. Though Amara was still upset, she appreciated her father's intervention. She knew that things were slowly changing, but she also realized that this experience had opened her eyes to how quickly assumptions could be made, and how important it was to stand up for what was right. After the incident at the store, Amara found herself thinking about what had happened more than she expected. It wasn't just the fact that she had been asked to leave. It was the way she had been treated. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to the story, something bigger than just a misunderstanding. Her father, Mr. Johnson, had promised to handle the situation, and he was a man of his word. He took the matter seriously and made sure that steps were taken to prevent anything like that from happening again. But for Amara, it wasn't just about getting an apology. It was about making sure that everyone, no matter their background or appearance, was treated with fairness and respect. A few days later, Amara received a call from her father's office. Mr. Harris, the store manager, wanted to speak with her directly and apologize again. Amara wasn't sure what to expect, but she agreed to meet him, determined to make sure her voice was heard. When Amara arrived at the meeting, she found Mr. Harris waiting for her in a small conference room. He stood up quickly when she walked in, his posture nervous. "Ms. Johnson, I want to sincerely apologize for what happened the other day. I was wrong, and I understand that now. I've had some time to reflect on my actions, and I realize how hurtful it was to treat you the way I did." Amara looked at him, still feeling some of the anger from the previous encounter. "I appreciate your apology," she said, trying to stay calm. "But what's more important than an apology is that this doesn't happen to anyone else. It's not just about me. It's about making sure the store is a place where everyone feels welcome." Mr. Harris nodded, acknowledging her words. "I completely agree," he said. "That's why I've been working with Mr. Johnson to implement new policies at the store. We're making sure that all employees receive proper training on diversity and inclusion. We're also reviewing our procedures to ensure that every customer, regardless of who they are, is treated with respect." Amara felt a sense of relief wash over her. It wasn't just an apology. It was clear that real change was happening. She had used her voice, and now the store was going to make sure that no one else would be treated the way she had been. As she left the meeting, Amara felt proud. She had taken a stand, and now she was seeing the results. But she knew that the work wasn't done. This was only the beginning, and there was still more to be done in the fight for fairness and equality. Back at home, Amara shared the news with her mother, Angela, who was just as pleased with the outcome. "I'm so proud of you," Angela said, wrapping her arms around her daughter. "You didn't let this go. You stood up for what was right, and now others will benefit from that." Amara smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. She knew that this wasn't just about one store. It was about making sure that people all over the community felt like they mattered, that they were seen, and that they were respected. The experience had taught her that change was possible, but it required action. It required speaking up and standing firm in the face of injustice. Amara knew that as long as she stayed true to her beliefs, she would continue to make a difference in the world, one step at a time. Amara was starting to feel that the hard work her family had put into resolving the situation was beginning to pay off. She had always believed in standing up for herself and others when they faced unfair treatment, but now she was seeing how that belief could lead to actual, positive change. After the meeting with Mr. Harris, things started to improve at the store. The training programs for employees were put in place, and Mr. Harris worked closely with Mr. Johnson, Amara's father, to ensure that the store was becoming a more inclusive and welcoming place for everyone. The changes were not just happening behind the scenes. Amara could see the difference when she went into the store, and it made her proud. One afternoon, while walking through the store, Amara noticed that the shelves were now lined with more advertisements promoting the store's new approach. There were posters about diversity, equality, and how every customer deserved to be treated with respect. Employees greeted her with a smile, and the atmosphere felt different, lighter, and friendlier. It was clear that the training had made a difference. Amara decided to stop by the store and talk to Mr. Harris to see how things were going. When she walked in, she saw him chatting with one of the employees near the counter. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Ms. Johnson, it's good to see you," Mr. Harris said warmly. "I just wanted to thank you again for your patience and understanding. The changes we've made are already making a difference. We've had a lot of positive feedback from customers and staff alike." Amara smiled, feeling encouraged. "I'm glad to hear that. It's good to know that the store is becoming a place where everyone can feel comfortable and valued." Mr. Harris nodded. "We're not perfect yet, but we're committed to getting better every day. We're learning from our mistakes, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be part of that process." As Amara stood there, listening to Mr. Harris, she realized how much her actions had meant. It wasn't just about making sure she was treated fairly. It was about creating a ripple effect that would continue to improve things for others in the future. Later that week, Amara received a call from Megan, the store's new diversity and inclusion officer. Megan was someone Amara had worked with during the transition, and she was excited to tell her about the progress the store had made. "We've just had our first community event," Megan said. "It was a huge success. We invited local families, schools, and businesses to come in and talk about the importance of diversity and inclusion. We had great turnout, and it was amazing to see the positive energy." Amara felt a wave of pride. She had been part of the change, and now her actions were influencing others. She knew it wouldn't be easy to maintain this momentum, but she was more determined than ever to continue making a difference. "That's wonderful," Amara replied. "I'm so happy to hear that things are moving in the right direction. It means a lot to me that we're making real progress." Megan agreed. "We're just getting started, but we have a solid foundation now. Thanks to you, we're on the right path. The work you've done here has truly made an impact." Amara smiled, feeling grateful for the opportunity to have contributed to such an important cause. She had helped the store become a better place for everyone, and in doing so, she had learned a powerful lesson. Change didn't always happen overnight, but with persistence, determination, and a willingness to speak up, positive change could take root and spread. As she left the store that day, Amara felt confident in the knowledge that her efforts had made a real difference, not just for herself, but for the entire community. She knew there was still more work to be done, but she was ready to continue fighting for what was right. And as she looked forward to the future, she felt hopeful about the lasting impact she had begun to create. The weeks following the changes at the store were filled with growth and reflection. Amara had seen the positive changes unfold, and it was clear that the atmosphere at the store had shifted. Employees seemed more energized, customers were feeling more welcome, and there was a new sense of unity in the community. It felt like a small victory had been won, but Amara knew there was still much more to be done. One Saturday afternoon, Amara decided to visit the store again. This time, she wasn't there to shop or address any issues. She just wanted to observe how things had changed. As she walked through the door, she noticed right away that the store felt different. There was a sense of openness in the air. Customers were greeted warmly by the staff, and the shelves were lined with new products. It was a welcoming atmosphere, one that Amara hadn't always felt before. She made her way to the back of the store, where she noticed Mr. Harris was talking to a group of new employees. They were gathered around him, listening intently as he spoke. Amara couldn't help but overhear parts of the conversation. Mr. Harris was explaining the importance of treating each customer with respect, regardless of their background, and how to ensure that everyone felt valued. As she approached, Mr. Harris turned and saw her. His face brightened with a smile. "Ms. Johnson, it's good to see you again," he said, walking over to greet her. Amara smiled back. "I'm glad to see that things are going so well," she replied. "It really feels different in here now. Everyone seems to be in a good mood." Mr. Harris nodded, his face reflecting a sense of pride. "It's been a lot of work, but it's all been worth it. The new training and our focus on inclusivity have made a big difference. We've even received positive feedback from customers, and I can already see how much more engaged our staff is." Amara was happy to hear that. "That's great. It's really nice to know that the changes are making an impact," she said. Before they could talk any longer, one of the employees approached with a customer, a parent with her child in tow. The employee smiled and greeted them warmly, asking if they needed help finding anything. The interaction was so natural, so friendly, that Amara couldn't help but smile to herself. This was what she had wanted, an environment where people felt welcome. As Amara walked around the store, she noticed other positive signs. There were more diverse products on display, representing different cultures and backgrounds. There were signs that celebrated diversity, showing the store's commitment to creating a space where everyone felt seen and respected. Before leaving, Amara stopped by the manager's office to check in with Mr. Harris one last time. "I just wanted to say thank you again," she said, her voice sincere. "I know it wasn't easy, but seeing how things are going now really makes me feel like it was all worth it. You've done a great job." Mr. Harris smiled, looking both proud and relieved. "Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I couldn't have done it without your help and guidance. I've learned a lot through this process, and I'm committed to making sure that these changes stay in place for the long term." Amara nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride. She had made a difference, not just in one store, but in the way people were treated. Her actions had sparked change, and it had spread beyond the walls of the store, touching the lives of those who had worked there and those who had shopped there. As she left the store that day, Amara realized that even the smallest action could have a ripple effect, leading to something much larger. She had helped create a space where people could come together, where everyone could feel respected, and where change was possible. She knew that her journey wasn't over. There were still challenges to face, but she was ready. With the lessons she had learned and the support of those around her, Amara was more determined than ever to continue fighting for a world where fairness and kindness were the norm. And with that thought in her heart, she walked into the future, hopeful and ready for whatever came next. The changes at the store had not only affected the customers, but had also begun to make a positive impact on the community. Amara felt a sense of pride whenever she saw the store's commitment to fairness being reflected in everyday interactions. It was clear that the transformation was more than just a business decision. It was a new way of thinking and acting. One afternoon, Amara's father, Mr. Johnson, invited her to join him for a meeting with Megan, the store's new diversity and inclusion officer. Megan had been working hard to implement new policies and initiatives that supported the store's new direction. Amara knew that her father was proud of the progress, and she was eager to learn more about the next steps. As they sat down in the office, Megan spoke with excitement. "The changes we've made are already starting to show results," she said, her eyes bright. "Not only are our employees more engaged, but we've also started building stronger relationships with local schools and community groups. We're hosting a series of events where students can learn about the importance of diversity and respect in the workplace." Amara listened carefully, impressed by the momentum they were building. "That's amazing," she said. "I'm glad to see that it's not just about making changes in the store. It's about making a difference in the community too." Megan smiled. "Exactly. We want to make sure that the message of inclusivity and fairness extends beyond the walls of the store. The more people we can reach, the bigger the impact we can have. And the best part is that people are already responding. We've received letters from families who are thankful for the changes. It's really inspiring." Mr. Johnson added, "This is just the beginning. We've seen that small steps can lead to big changes, but we want to make sure that this continues long-term. This is a commitment we're making to the community, and we'll keep working to make sure we're doing the right thing." Amara couldn't agree more. She was proud of the way her father had handled the situation with Mr. Harris and the store staff. But now she realized that the work wasn't just about one incident. It was about building a culture of respect, equality, and fairness for everyone, no matter their background. The conversation then shifted to the next phase of their work. "We want to ensure that our changes are sustainable," Megan explained. "We're introducing a mentorship program for young people in the community. We want to help them understand the value of diversity and teach them how to be leaders who can inspire change in their own environments." Amara was excited by the idea. "That sounds like a great opportunity for the next generation. I think it's so important that young people learn how to create positive change early on. They're the future of this community." Her father agreed. "Absolutely. We've seen how powerful it can be when we invest in people, especially those who have the potential to make a difference. I'm proud of everything we've done, but there's always more to be done." As the meeting concluded, Amara felt more determined than ever. She was proud of the role her family had played in transforming the store into a place where everyone could feel welcome. But more than that, she was proud to be part of a larger movement toward change, one that would continue to grow and impact many lives. Walking out of the office, Amara felt a sense of hope. The work was far from over, but she knew that together they could create a world where respect, fairness, and kindness were the foundation of every community. And with each step, they were moving closer to that goal. As the weeks passed, Amara watched as the store continued to transform, and the changes that had started with a single incident were now becoming a lasting part of the store's culture. The new policies and training were not only making the employees more respectful and understanding, but the store was also starting to gain a positive reputation in the community. One afternoon, Amara received an unexpected phone call from Megan, the store's diversity and inclusion officer. Megan was excited as she spoke. "Amara, you won't believe this. The store has received a lot of positive attention from the local schools. Teachers and students have been reaching out to thank us for the changes, and we've been invited to participate in a community diversity fair next month." Amara couldn't help but smile. "That sounds amazing. I'm so glad to hear that people are noticing the changes we've worked so hard for." Megan agreed. "We've come a long way, and we want to keep building on this momentum. The community is starting to see how important it is to foster respect and inclusivity, and now we have the chance to share that message with even more people." Amara felt proud to know that the efforts she and her family had put into creating a more welcoming store were beginning to make a real impact. As the store's atmosphere became more open and inviting, it was clear that their message was resonating with the people around them. In the days leading up to the diversity fair, Amara and her parents helped organize the store's booth. They would have the opportunity to speak with people from all walks of life about the importance of fairness and respect, and how small acts of kindness and inclusion could lead to big changes. The day of the fair arrived, and Amara was excited, but also a little nervous. She stood at the booth, surrounded by colorful displays that showcased the store's efforts to promote diversity. There were pamphlets, posters, and even a short video that told the story of how the store had made changes after Amara's experience. As the crowd began to gather, people approached the booth to learn more. Amara shared her story of how she had been treated unfairly and how her father and the store's leadership had worked to turn things around. She was proud to tell people that the store was now committed to inclusivity and that the changes had not only made the store a better place, but had also inspired others to think differently. One woman, who had stopped by with her young daughter, smiled at Amara. "I saw the changes at the store, and I'm so glad to hear how it all started. It's inspiring to know that a small act of kindness can create such a big impact. My daughter and I will definitely be supporting your store from now on." Amara's heart swelled with pride. Hearing firsthand how her actions had inspired others made her realize just how far-reaching the effects of their efforts had become. It wasn't just about the store anymore. It was about creating a ripple effect of kindness and respect that spread throughout the community. As the event continued, Amara was approached by several people who shared their own stories of discrimination and how they had struggled to be treated fairly. Amara listened carefully to each story and offered words of encouragement. She knew that change was still a long way off, but she felt hopeful knowing that each small step was bringing them closer to a world where everyone was treated with dignity and respect. By the end of the day, the booth had attracted a lot of attention, and Amara felt proud of the difference they were making. As the event wrapped up, she stood with her parents, reflecting on how far they had come. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Amara realized that the fight for fairness didn't end with one incident. It was a lifelong commitment, and with every person she inspired, every conversation she had, she knew they were moving closer to creating a world where kindness and respect were the foundation of every community. Months had passed since the Community Diversity Fair, and Amara could hardly believe how much had changed since the incident at the store. What had started as a frustrating moment in her life had blossomed into a movement for change, not just within the store, but across the entire community. Amara had become a voice for fairness and inclusivity, and the ripple effect of her actions continued to spread. The store, under her father's leadership, had transformed into a place where all customers were treated equally, with respect and kindness. Mr. Harris, the manager who had once treated Amara unfairly, had grown from his mistake and worked hard to be a better leader. He had helped train new employees, teaching them how to foster an inclusive environment where everyone was welcome. Amara had continued to be involved with the store's initiatives. She worked with Megan, the Diversity and Inclusion Officer, on various projects. They had launched programs in local schools, encouraging young people to talk about respect, kindness, and the importance of standing up for what's right. The response from the students had been incredible. Teachers reported that students were becoming more open-minded, and many of the young people started their own projects to promote inclusivity in their communities. One evening, Amara and her parents sat down for dinner. The family had gathered to celebrate their progress, and they were all in good spirits. As they talked about how much had changed, Amara reflected on how proud she felt of what they had achieved. She had never imagined that a single moment of unfair treatment could lead to such a powerful wave of positive change. "I never thought this would be how things turned out," Amara said, smiling at her parents. "When I was kicked out of the store, I was so upset. But now, looking at all we've accomplished, it feels like everything happened for a reason." Her father, Mr. Johnson, nodded with pride. "Sometimes, Amara, the hardest moments bring about the greatest changes. You showed incredible strength by standing up for what was right. And now we're seeing the results of that strength. Angela, Amara's mother, added, "You've taught us all that it's not enough to wait for change to happen. We have to make it happen ourselves. I couldn't be prouder of you." The conversation moved to the future, and Amara began to think about the path ahead. She had learned so much from the experiences she had gone through, and she felt more determined than ever to continue making a difference. She wanted to keep spreading the message of respect, kindness, and equality, not just within her own community, but in the world at large. After dinner, Amara sat in her room, thinking about everything she had accomplished. She had faced an unfair situation, but instead of letting it define her, she had turned it into something that helped others. The journey wasn't over, but Amara felt like she was on the right path. Her father's store was thriving, and it had become a symbol of change in the community. Amara knew that their story would continue to inspire people for years to come. It wasn't just about one store or one incident. It was about creating a lasting legacy of kindness and inclusivity. As Amara looked out the window, she felt hopeful for the future. She had made a difference, and with every step forward, she knew she was helping to build a world where everyone, no matter their background, could feel respected and valued. And with that thought in her heart, she was ready to continue fighting for what was right.